Hello, and welcome to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. This is our Zettelkasten week, and Victoria has already teased us yesterday with some more pools for this hot weather, so I can't wait to hear what she's got to say. Victoria, what are you going to tell us about today?
If you've been around a while, you know that usually my topic is somehow a play on or related to what's coming up in my physical monthly newsletter. So for our Zettelkasten week, I wanted to stick with that because this time, since you guys are my digital family, you get a sneak preview of something special that I've put into this newsletter. Because we're working on building out our Zettelkasten, I want to give you two kinds of a motif that you can develop as you're building out your notebooks. Now, you should recall from our earlier videos, I walked you through symbols and motifs. And you may recall that symbols are an object or a thing that represents something else. And motifs, which can also be symbols, are recurring patterns of a thing. So with that in the back of your mind, I want to introduce you to two kinds of motif. That way, as you're going through this week, you can be thinking about, have you noticed one of these? Or do you have one that's maybe a favorite that you hadn't even thought of putting into your writing? That's the road we're going down. So, what are these two interesting motifs that I introduce in my newsletter? The first one is called ekphrasis, and that simply means a representation of art in text. So think about it. Have you ever been reading a book and maybe had the main narrator describe a beautiful painting? That's ekphrasis. It's a way of incorporating an artistic object into your text so that you're signaling something to the reader. Now, how might you use that? Well, first and foremost, maybe you use it to indicate the internal state of the character. So let's say a character who's kind of rough and tumble is suddenly finding himself falling in love. Maybe he relays seeing a beautiful painting as a metaphor or a motif for how he's feeling about this other person. That's how you use ekphrasis in your writing. Now, I give you a bunch more examples in my newsletter, but we'll keep it brief here. So let's move on to the second one. The second one is called mellophrasis, and it means incorporating music into your text. Now, when I first learned about all this stuff way back in college, I was so excited. Number one, to learn that doing this in the text actually had a cool name. And number two, that there are multiple levels of ways of doing it. So when you're incorporating music, you can do that in one of two ways as well. It can be an actual piece of music, like maybe you refer to Beethoven and a particular symphony, and your character is going on and on about experiencing this symphony for the first time. Or maybe you make up a piece of music and you never name the composer and you never name the piece, but the character is talking about it as if it's something real. That's a really cool way to bring your reader further into the story, because if you reveal that the piece of music is an actual verifiable thing, then they can go out and do some research and listen to it, and it brings them that extra layer of experience into the story. On the other hand, if it's something that you've made up and you don't share that it's a real composer or a real piece of music, you're just describing the way that the music feels to the character. You're keeping that focus exclusively on the character and not sending your reader out on a research mission. So, my challenge to you for this Zettelkasten week is look for instances of art being used in text or music being used in text, and pay attention to how and why the author did that. More importantly, get that down on your note cards. Start that pool for the literary device of ekphrasis and mellophrasis, and start collecting ways that you might use that. Maybe you have a particularly favorite band or a piece of music that's meaningful or a piece of art that's meaningful. There's all kinds of ways that you can send messages to your reader simply by incorporating one of those things, whether it's a verifiably real thing or it's something entirely made up for the story world. That's your experiment, so go build some pools. Kathleen?
Oh my goodness, you always delight me. I always feel that I come away just ever so much more enlightened and ever so much more possessive of some little tools that I can add to my collection and add to my Zettelkasten to help further the writing. So thank you so much. Well, we are on the balanced trait of equanimity. And the first week, we talked about the definition, what it means. We said in as simplest terms possible that it's remaining calm in the storm. When everything seems frazzling, your character who's strong in equanimity can remain calm. But as you will also recall, it's a balance trait. And that means that there's two ways to fail. If your character has equanimity as a base trait or an anchor trait, he's doing great because in that case, he's pretty secure and pretty solid. But if he's got equanimity in the rudder where he's trying to decide, am I going to maintain equity? How am I going to maintain equity? He has two ways to fall off and fail. And the two ways that he can fail are either that he can lose composure and just go, I can't make up my mind. I can't figure it out, to give way to frustration and the emotions start boiling up and he can't think straight. But there's another way to fail as well. And that is to say, okay, there's a lot going on here. I've got so much on my to-do list. Everybody's depending on me. Phooey, just throw it all away. I don't want those responsibilities. I don't want all of that going on. I'm going to go to the movies. Heck, forget it. I'm just going to chill out on my sofa. I'm going to pop some popcorn, cork a beer, and watch a movie. So there's two ways to fail. One way is to give up to frustration. And the other way is to break through, but break through by throwing off the thing that is disturbing you. So we don't want our characters, if it's our hero character, we want them to hold on and stay calm, persevere, solve the problem, study for that big exam, and take it and do the best you can, and it'll probably be plenty good enough. And we're going to be pushing for our characters to do these kinds of things. But what we always try to do in our experience collection is to look around in real life out there or in our memories, and that could be our own experiences or books we've read, movies we've watched, where we've seen the struggle of equanimity taking place. Well, how do you know there's a struggle? You know there's a struggle because there's a challenge, there's a storm, and you see the character struggling to stay calm. So what I want for you to do, to really challenge yourself, is to make two experience cards, two ways to fail. Is there an experience that you can recall, that you lived through, or that you read about or saw in a movie where the character just gave up the struggle and just blotted it out and went for a false equanimity? And I want you to make another one where there was the other side of failure, where the character just goes, no, I can't do it. I can't think. I can't reason. No, I'm just, and just gives way to frustration. Two possible ways to fail. All right, that's your assignment. Find equanimity. What does it look like? What does it sound like? How can you clue your reader in that a character has failed in one of these two ways when they were in the midst of the struggle? Victoria, what would you like to add?
Once again, we've managed to perfectly dovetail. I don't know how we do it because we really don't plan this stuff ahead of time. What I found myself thinking was, what if you use some kind of experience with a painting or a piece of music to demonstrate that journey from, say, a chaotic, crazy state to a calm state? There's a whole lot of room to wiggle in there. Or what if they go the other direction? What if your character begins calm and cool and level-headed and has it all together, but you use their experience of perhaps a musical piece or something to indicate that their calm is slowly unraveling and things are going south? Again, lots of room to wiggle in there. So start building your pools, do your experience collection cards, and lean into the possibilities, because I think this episode is going to be one of the best ones. There's lots of stuff here to sink your teeth into. If you'll just start looking around and hunting for, how can I show this? How can I represent this in the text so that the reader follows where I'm leading? But more importantly, if people wanted to find us or perhaps share what they come up with, where would they go?
They would come to LiLLiPub.org. LiLLiPub. It's where we hang out when we're not here in YouTube land. And the best part of all, if you can't get enough of Victoria, join LiLLiPub and come join us on Saturdays where we have live Zoom call and we share each other's writing, we post our writing, we read each other's writing, we give advice, encouragement. It's just a marvelous, marvelous opportunity. LiLLiPub is the best $8 you could ever spend if you are a writer, a reader, or just someone who wants to cheer on the other writers in the community. If you're just looking for a calm, peaceful, positive place to hang out, you're looking for a digital living room that's peaceful and loving and caring, you still can't beat LiLLiPub. So come on over and we'll see you there. Bye-bye.